Hey everybody. I was just sitting here thinking, and I had these apples here to make this apple pie, but I was going to let you kind of see what I do. A lot of people use peelers, but I don't use peelers much. Robert likes to use them, but I've just always kind of peeled my stuff, you know, just the way I've always done it. But what I'm going to do today is I'm going to take 2 Pink Lady apples, 1 big Granny Smith, and 2 of these Arkansas Blacks. And I'm going to put all 3 apples in a pie. Now let me set these apples over here just a minute, and I'll peel these in the pan. The first thing we're going to do, I'll let you watch what I'm doing, and I'll show you how I'm going to cut these up. Whoops, I'm sorry guys. This thing is being just a little cantankerous this morning. But first I just peel the apples. No big deal here. But I don't cut my apples in slices. I cut them in chunks. And I put them on the stove for just a few minutes. Just enough to soften them a little bit. Because I don't like apple pies that the apples are half raw in. I just don't like them like that. And if you do like them like that, then, do yours however you want to. Put them in there raw. Everybody's different, and I know that. And that's the reason I always tell you all this. I believe I'm going to have to peel another apple here because this one's got a lot of spots in it. It's not wanting to. I don't like all those bad spots in them either. Okay. Now, I may peel another Arkansas Black. I made the best pie last year with some Arkansas Blacks and Granny Smiths. It was a really good pie. And I'm not even crazy about apple pie. I can eat it. I like it okay. But it's not my favorite kind of pie. But I had these apples here, and Robert kept saying, well, you need to do something with those apples. So I thought, well, I've got those Pink Ladies out there. I got him the other day. I'll take a couple of those Pink Ladies. And this Granny Smith I had in the refrigerator. I had one of those left. And so if there's anybody that lives around Lawrenceburg, Kentucky today, and you want an apple pie, you better give me a buzz. Oh. And I put on there a while ago, I said, put your name, your city that you live in if you live in Kentucky. Lots of people didn't listen. Oh, if I was your all's teacher, I'd get you good. And that's the bad thing is, you need to listen. And I even wrote it up above it. I just wanted people from Kentucky right now for a reason. Because I go around Kentucky quite a bit. And I thought sometimes I might decide to fix something and stop in at one of these little places, and meet some people that like to watch the cooking show. Or the cooking videos, or whatever you want to call it. I don't know. A lot of people call it a show. I don't know what to call it. Spectacle, probably. Sometimes I feel like I'm a spectacle. And I know y'all sitting there. Is she going to sit there and peel every one of those apples? Yes, I am. I sure am. And I'm talking to you all while I'm doing it. Because I know there's lots of people that like for me to do that. So that's what I'm doing. Now I'm going to get my little cutting thing out here. But that's why your TV has a button on it, or your phone, or whatever you got. If you don't want to watch something, turn it off. Just don't try to ruin it for everybody else. Okay, let's see. Now this is the way I do my apples. These Arkansas Blacks are getting, they're getting too ripe, really, to make apple pies from almost. Not hardly, but they're getting there. I've had these out on the counter, too, for a couple of days, so that speeds things up. If you keep apples and fruit in the refrigerator, it slows down the ripening process. And it keeps them fresh, So, I keep my oranges in there most of the time. things like that, the grapes. You don't want them to, you just don't want them sitting outside. Now, what I do is I've got this at 1/4, and I cut it in half one more time, and I chop it right like that. I make 4 pieces out of it. I make chunks. So I cut it. Okay. Sometimes if it's 2 bigger pieces, I'll make it into, 2 more. Just depends on how big the apple is. You really get a bite of apple this way too. But it's not raw because I power cook it. I pre-cook it, before I put it in the pie. And I also put my cornstarch and everything in it there. And that one there is a little bit bigger. So now, let me get the Granny Smith up here. Ew, that one's hard, guys. Cut this little core out. I remember when I was a little girl and I'd watch my granny and my mommy do stuff like this, and I think, how do they get that knife to work so good? It won't work in my hands, And when you're a little kid, your fine motor skills haven't developed yet, enough to be able to maneuver all these things that we do with. Don't have the control when you're little. And that takes just developing, You have to develop. Now I cut those pieces into 3 because that Granny Smith was a lot bigger apple. Now we're going to get the Pink Lady. Pink Lady. Robert likes real crunchy apples. He doesn't like a soft apple at all. And so I have to make sure I get him, crunchy apples. He will say I'm particular, but he's a lot more particular than I am. Robert is. He is a lot more. He thinks he's not, but he is. Certain things have to be cold. Certain things have to be this. Certain things have to be that. And I told him, I said, good grief, Robert, you're a lot more particular than I ever thought about being. But now I'm not going to make my pie crust. I'm going to use a store-bought pie crust just because it's much handier and easier for me. If you want to make a homemade pie crust, be my guest, guys, if that's what you want to do. And I'll probably use a deep dish crust on this because, to be honest, the regular pie crusts are just horrible anymore. You can't find a good one. Can't find a good pie crust. Now, the last time I used deep dish, they were a little better. Watch them make a fibber out of me. Probably will. Okay, now we got all of our apples ready here. Let me get these seeds off and put them in the garbage. Now, I'm going to take these over to the stove, and I'll be right back and get you and move you. Okay. Now, let me get my light on here. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is move that kettle out of the way. I got ready to fix those cranberries, and too many of my cranberries had already gone bad, so I lost my cranberries. But it'd be all right, I guess. Now, what I do is I put just a tiny little bit of oil. I mean, just enough that I can spread it around the pan. And I take my hands and just wipe it around. Like that. Let me turn you just a little bit. And then I put my apples in. Now, for about 5 apples, you want to use about a 1/2 cup of sugar. No more than that. You don't need a lot of sugar here. And if you want to make this a sugar-free pie, just put about a little less than a half a cup of stevia, Splenda, whatever it is you like to use. And then add just like a tablespoon of sugar. Or, because that kind of makes it work better. I don't know why, but it does. And if you've got a blend that you like to use that. If you want to make this a sugar-free pie, you can do that, okay? Just remember, however much sugar I use, you substitute it with a sweetener. And I said, don't put more than a half a cup in this. And really, you don't need more than a half a cup. Sometimes I'll taste it. And because, apples are different. Some are much more tart than others. So I taste it if I feel like it needs a little bit more. But you do the same thing with the sweetener. Just add a little more sweetener to it. Let me get my sugar over here. Wash my hands off. Get my dish towel and lay it here. Sometimes I put some brown sugar in these. Now these little cups right here hold a quarter cup of sugar. So I may just do a quarter cup right now and see how that is. And I hope I got some apple juice left. Yep. I don't start my apples with water. You got to have something in here. So I use apple juice. I use something that has apple flavor because I like to have that thickener in here, that I put to get my apples started. So I use apple juice. I've used about a third of the bottle. Now I'm going to turn my apples on. And I will set this apple juice right here just in case I need it. And now I'm going to sprinkle just a little bit of salt. Just like you would salt food. Not a lot though. A little bit of salt gives things, it brings out the flavor. Okay? Let me get my cinnamon down here. Because I put my cinnamon on my apples once I get about ready. Let me turn let's see. I'm going to cook this on about 365. I'm going to bump up the temperature just a little bit. Let me get my spatula so I don't tear them up. Okay. Now, it takes a second for the stove to start. So, I'm going to let this get started and I'll be back in just a second. Okay, as you can tell, it's starting to cook. I'm going to try to get you over here a little closer. And you can probably hear the apples. And what I do is I try to mix them around and kind of get the sugar all over it and down in it. I do believe I'm going to put a little bit more apple juice. Just a tad. Now, I'm going to let this cook for just a minute or two. And right now, I'm going to add about a tablespoon of butter. And we'll put that in there and let it cook with the apples. Just let it cook for a minute. Let me get my cornstarch down. Make my cornstarch slurry. And what you're going to do is you're going to take a couple of, just a couple of teaspoons of cornstarch, and you're going to put apple juice in it. You're not going to put water, you're going to put apple juice. So we're going to stir it up, get mixed up here. And I'm just going to set it out of the way just a little bit there while I'm kind of working on the apples. Now, the apples are starting to soften just a little bit, so I'm going to put my cinnamon in now. Let me get a spoon here so I can kind of judge what I'm doing. Trying not to get my cinnamon over that heat, that steam though, because it will cause it to clump together and it's already aggravating it. Let me do it this way. I'll take my lid off. I'm going to use about that much cinnamon. You can see what I'm doing there. See it? And that's in a teaspoon. And then I'll taste of it and see if that's as much as I want. If it is, then I quit. It looks like it's going to be plenty though. Oh, goodness. Knocked my apple out there. I'm going to turn this down just a little bit, because I don't want it cooking too fast. Now, I can see I need to add just a little bit more apple juice, because it's cooked out part of the way. I'm trying to get all the apples kind of covered in the cinnamon and get it mixed up good. Now, I'm going to pour my slurry over the top of this. Okay. Take it off of the heat. If you need a little more apple juice in it, why? That'll work. Trying to keep it off the heat right now, because it's, if you don't have plenty of liquid in there, and this is not stirring good. So I'm going to get my spoon here. Get my old trusty spoon that stirs good. Now, if it still looks too thick, add a little more apple juice. I usually pour it in slower than what I did there, but I'm trying to rush, and I shouldn't do that. Now I'm going to taste. Give me a little spoon here and taste of mine to see if I've got enough sugar in it. Might need just a tad, but boy, not much. Okay, now I've got the apples ready, and all I need to do now is put them in the pie shell. So I'm going to set them over to the side and put a lid on them until I get the pie shell ready. Okay? Okay. Now, and I think it needs just a little bit more butter. Put me just a little bit more butter in there and let it be melting. while I'm doing this. Now I'm going to put the pie shell. I'm going to put the pie crust in my pie pan. And I'm just going to use one of my pie pans. And get it fixed. Let me put this stuff over here. Sorry guys. Let me pause you just a second. Now this is something I always like to do with my apple pies is I put some dried cranberries in them. If you don't want them in there, don't put them in, okay? I just like them in the pie. I think they're good in it. So I'm putting me about a quarter cup of dried cranberries in it. And then I'll kind of stir it up in there. Put my lid back on it. Put my cranberries back up. I'll be back in just a sec. Okay, this is my pie pan that I'm using. You can see it's one of my old. I bought this from. I think I bought it online. They're used. I like them, so I just got some of them from somebody. And this is a roll of the store-bought pie crust, and I'm going to cut it open. If you've never used these are really easy to use. You want to set it out about 5 minutes before you're going to use it to kind of thaw out a little bit and make it a little more pliable to move. I didn't do that, but I'm hoping that it rolls out pretty good. I think it's going to. Yeah, pretty good. Now, sometimes I just lay it on my counter. If you're like me, you clean your counter so much that... Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my rolling pin and I'm going to roll it just a little bit. Not a lot, but just a little. Just to thin it out just a little tad. If I don't knock my pie plate off there. Okay, now I'm going to pick it up from the bottom like this and I'm going to lay it right over the top. Right like that. Let me get you all down here a little bit where you can see. And you try to get it to lay down in there as best you can. And then you just kind of push it around the top. I'm sure a lot of you ladies know how to do this. You've probably done this a lot more than I have. Now, always press it, put your finger down around the bottom, and go around the inside of it and press toward it to make sure you've got it down good. Then go back up and check your top again. Now, this is the way my granny always did. She always went right around the edge, right like this. She just cut it off. My granny never made pies a lot, but if she ever did... Now, I saw my Granny Hollis. That's my dad's mom. She made pies a lot. That's the one I think I got my cooking skills from, is her. Because she cooked for a lot of people. She had a big family, and, you know, she had to cook. So, if I had something to use that little thing on right there, I would. Now, when you get this done, press it over here around the edge a little bit more because it has a tendency to shrink when it bakes. Okay? Now then. If you want to take a fork and go around the top of it like this to make it a little decoration around it, you can. And sometimes it keeps it from shrinking as bad, they say. I don't know if it does or not. But I seen my granny do this. Saw her do it a lot. Okay, now let me get the apple pie filling. Okay, now we're going to pour this in here. Okay, now let me kind of stir this around. Get the apples kind of maneuvered around on it here. Press from the center out to the edge. Try to get it flattened out and even as you can. Now the cranberries really give it that little added punch, you know, that little added flavor. If you've never put cranberries in an apple pie, you might want to try it. Okay. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go out there and get another pie crust. And I'm going to bring it in and I'm just going to make little decorations around the top. I'm not going to put you could put a lattice top over it or a whole piece. But a lot of people don't like all this crust. It's just a lot of added stuff that you don't need. So I just have a tendency to take part of it and make some